Singapore's parliament has endorsed the white paper on population and the accompanying land use plan, but not before amendments were made to the white paper that supports the maintenance of a strong Singaporean core. The Prime Minister also weighed in, stressing that the conversation doesn't end today and that population projections and related policies will be reviewed closer to 2020. He emphasized that everything is a means to one end, that is, to enable the government to improve the lives of Singaporeans. 77 MPs voted yes and 13 no, with one abstention.
The vote on the white paper underscores just how strongly MPs felt about the issue. Over the course of the week, various concerns were raised. For example, the issue of overcrowding, with a projected population of 6.9 million by 2030. The Prime Minister said the government is not deciding on a population trajectory beyond 2020 and that this should be left to future governments and Singaporeans to decide. He then offered his own assessment on how the total population may eventually add up.
In my view, if we look at 2030, I think 6 million will not be enough to meet Singaporeans' needs as our population ages. But I believe that the total population in 2030, should be significantly below 6.9 million, and beyond 2030, in the very long term, it should not increase beyond that.
Mr. Lee spoke in Malay, Chinese and English. In his English speech, he highlighted 3 groups of particular concern: elderly Singaporeans, the low-income group and the young. For the sake of the future generation, Mr. Lee said the country has to come to a consensus on the right population mix. On that note, Mr. Lee acknowledged that one worry over the projected 6.9 million figure is that citizens will only form about 55% of the total population, down from the 62% or so today. He said he appreciates that numbers do matter and that the government will track and control the numbers of non-Singaporeans. But he added the Singapore core is not just about numbers, but the spirit. Ultimately, he said the Singaporean identity needs to be strengthened. New citizens too, he said, need to put in effort to integrate and commit their loyalty to the country.
People who embrace our values, our ideals, who have sunk roots here, who've given their loyalty to Singapore, for whom, when you say their pledge and you see the helicopter flying past on National Day, it's a special moment. Many will have been living in the heartlands, been to school together. We will share memories and experiences.
Mr. Lee promised that Singaporeans will always come first and be at the heart of the government's policies.
It has to be so, and it will always be so, because the government is elected by Singaporeans and responsible to Singaporeans. But let me add also that at the same time, Singaporeans cannot afford to be just here for the ride, passengers. We are not an oil state where citizens can live on the oil wealth and non-citizens do the work. For Singapore to thrive, we Singaporeans must always stay lean and hungry. If we lose our drive, we will lose out.
Mr. Lee said the future is bright if Singapore makes the right choices. He reminded Singaporeans of a promise former Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew had made during the country's darkest days after separation back in 1965.
This is not a country that belongs to any single community. It belongs to all of us. This was a mud-flat swamp. Today, this is a modern city. 10 years from now, this will be a metropolis. Never fear.
48 years later, this Prime Minister makes a similar promise.
And we did it. Together we built a nation. So never fear. We can build an even better Singapore for all Singaporeans.
More than 70 MPs spoke during the 5-day parliamentary debate.